Today marks 1 year that my beloved Cyrus Carmack Belton was tragically taken at the tender age of 14. On May 28th, 2023, Cyrus walked into a Shell gas station to purchase 4 bottles of water and some snacks. He was racially profiled and he was falsely accused of stealing that water. Cyrus left that gas station walking, and Andy Chow and Rick Chow took off running after my son. And Rick Chow shot my 14-year-old in the back while he was running, and my son died. Andy Chow, the son, is still free, but the father is behind bars awaiting trial. However, in the state of South Carolina, it's a hand of one is a hand of all. So if you are complicit and or present at the time of a crime, you too are arrested and charged. My family and I have been rallying and pushing and just trying to get justice for our Cyrus, because Andy Chow is still free, and under South Carolina law, he too should have been arrested with his father, because he was the one to initially chase after him. The chain of events started with Andy, ended with his father shooting my son in the back. We live in a world that is filled with hate and racism and prejudice, and people love to turn a blind eye because it doesn't affect them. And today, May 28th, 2024, I sit here, one less son, all because of somebody else's hatred in their heart. And I just don't understand. My son was only visiting that community. We didn't even live over there. He was just visiting. That business owner already had hundreds of reports against him. He had already shot at 2 people. And he was still able to run his business and still able to terrorize a community of people that ultimately allowed him to freely act in such a way that it cost my son his life. He just graduated the 8th grade 4 days prior to his death. And he and that family, the Chows, has left devastation to our family, to our friends, to the community. But I sit here and I just try to remember all of the good times and his smile and his laugh and his hugs. I just miss my baby so much. But today, Cyrus Monroe, is so hard without you. But with all of that, we are still pushing for the solicitor, Byron Gibson, to bring charges against Andy Chow, to arrest him. He too was complicit in the death of Cyrus. Justice for Cyrus Carmack Belton.
Let's just dive right into this one. Welcome back to everybody. This stories you guys just heard is by the mama that lost a son. This boy you're looking at, that was his mom telling the whole world that justice has not been given to her son. This boy just went to the store to get water. Then he decided that he just do not want the water anymore. Yet he was chased by the store owner, by the store owner's son, and he was running away from them. Yet he lost his life. That's why the internet is going crazy about this incident because it is sad. That's why the mama still coming online to speak to the world, to speak to who needs to listen, that justice has not been given to her son. All this boy did was to buy a water in a store simply because he was white, he was a black boy, and he was being followed. He was being chased down until he lost his life. Now the internet is going crazy. I am gonna be rolling y'all. How people are reacting to this story right now because it is sad. And credit to the creators.
But I wanted to speak about this not as an anime content creator, but as an Asian American. Rick Chow was found not guilty in the murder of Cyrus Carmack Belton after chasing him down for 130 yards and shooting him in the back over supposedly a stolen water bottle. It is disgustingly similar to the murder of Latasha Harlins in 1991 when Korean store owner Soon Ja-do fought her and shot her in the back of the head as she was leaving over supposedly a stolen bottle of orange juice. I'm glad that a lot of other Asian Americans have spoken up about this already, so I don't have too much to add. I just want to be another point from which we can speak out against anti-blackness within our community. The fact that these two events happened 35 years apart from each other makes me question if we as Asian Americans have even made any progress as allies. I've seen so many other comments from other videos regarding this issue from black people saying that they feel like they don't have any allies anywhere. And you know what? If we as Asian Americans stand complacent while their children are being chased and shot in the back, we don't deserve to call ourselves allies. That's why I believe the most important thing right now is for us not to just be in solidarity, but to actively speak out against anti-blackness when we see it. If we don't, we are upholding white supremacy and proving to people that we have a desire of proximity to whiteness at the expense of our fellow minority communities. I'm sorry, I really don't have any like profound words or anything. I'm more angry than anything else. But all in all, we as Asian Americans need to do better. We need to show that we do not stand for the murder of black children. We need to show that we do not stand for anti-blackness. And overall, we just need to do more to prove that we are actual allies to our fellow black community.
Cyrus Carmack Belton. He was 14 years old. And last night, a jury in Richland County, South Carolina, found the man who shot him in the back not guilty of murder. And I want to talk about it. On May 28, 2023, Cyrus walked into a Shell gas station on Park Lane Road in Columbia. He picked up 4 bottles of water, then he put them back. He didn't steal anything, the surveillance showed it. The man who owned the store accused him of stealing anyway, and Cyrus ran. The owner and his adult son chased that boy out of the store, more than 130 yards down the street. Then the owner shot him in the back. Cyrus was just 14 years old. He bled out on the pavement outside the gas station. The trial took 5 days, and the jury deliberated for 8 hours. They asked the judge to clarify the legal instruction multiple times during the deliberation. One of the prosecutors told them during the closing arguments, "This is what malice looks like. A shot to the back tells the story better than any witness ever could." Then the jury came back not guilty. I don't have anything clever to say about that. A child is dead. He was just 14 years old. He didn't steal anything. He shot him in the back during a 130-yard chase. And a jury looked at all the evidence and decided that nothing about that warranted a murder conviction. Cyrus's father, Troy Belton, sat in the courtroom and listened to the verdict be read. The family's attorney, Todd Rutherford, spoke outside the courtroom with Troy standing next to him. Troy didn't address the cameras. Rutherford said the anger is palpable tonight. You can feel it. You can touch it. He asked the people watching to let anger live in words, in conversations, in what we say and what we write, not in anything else. See, I don't want to use Cyrus as a symbol. He's not a teaching moment. He was a child, okay? He had a father in that courtroom yesterday. He had a cousin who said she stayed silent for 3 years, carrying his death. He had people who loved him. He has people who love him. A 14-year-old black boy was shot in the back over water that he did not take. There was video of him not taking it. The jury saw the video and they still acquitted that man anyway. If you're black and you're watching this, I know. Me too. There's nothing we can say to make this land any softer. The sad truth is that we've seen this before, and we'll probably see it again. If you're not black and watching this, what happened to Cyrus is what we're talking about when we say what we say about this country and what it does to black children. This is the receipt, not a hypothetical, not a historical example. A 14-year-old boy, gone forever. Cyrus's family is going to continue pursuing a civil case, as they should. The criminal trial is over. So I just want to close with saying rest in peace, Cyrus Carmack Belton. You were just 14 years old. Your name is the only thing I have for you tonight. So I'm going to keep saying it, and I hope the people watching this will too.
Like, I'm not even surprised that about the Rick Chow verdict. Like, this is America. Like, the system rewards you for being racist and killing people of color. Like, the American system was built from the ground up by slave owners. Like, they reward you for acting in this way, for being racist. That's why, the system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was intended to do. That's what it did with Rick Chow. So, all these people that apologize to the system, you'll need to stop. Like, the system don't care about your apology. Like, it's doing its job. It's doing what it was designed to do. That's why a murderer got set free.
We should talk about Rick Chow. In 2023, he shot a 14-year-old black boy, Cyrus Carmack Belton. He had shot at 2 people prior to this. And I need the Asian American community to understand that you did not fall out of a coconut tree. That the anti-blackness rooted in the Asian American community is the Asian American community upholding white supremacy. AAPI month is over, but we all need a history lesson. Let me go through a couple things. 1, slavery never ended. I will tie everything together, but stay with me. Slavery never ended. It was actually just the modern prison system. 2, U.S. conquest never ended. It's just much easier to do a regime change and control other people's governments. So Korea and the Philippines, I'm talking in broad strokes to make a point. They are glorified U.S. military bases. The U.S. doesn't just hold hard power over these countries. Many Asian countries, they also hold soft power because America exports its culture. The bedrock of U.S. culture is capitalism, white supremacy, and because of modern slavery, anti-blackness. So when we tempt Asian immigrants to come to America that have consumed the American dream, The dream, the allure is the proximity to whiteness. But when you get here, at best you're a cog in the capitalist machine, and at worst, you too are a glorified serf, a subsistence farmer, someone who has to work just to survive. And you realize you were tricked by the system. But instead of pushing against the system, because then you would have to admit that you are fallible, that you can be tricked, you instead lean into the oppressive system and uphold the tenets of white supremacy in the United States, because you think that one day you'll be rewarded by this. So that anti-blackness that you are performing and mirroring mainstream white culture becomes ingrained in you, and you begin to believe it. And then you begin to spread it and pass it down. And then innocent young black children are murdered without repercussion. If you are an Asian American and you harbor anti-blackness within your heart, you're actually upholding your very own oppression. You're holding the knife of white supremacy to your own neck. Model minority myth meant to divide and conquer us. Just think critically, why does mainstream culture sow so much division? And why do you believe it? Why do you eat it up? I was a teacher for 2 years at many predominantly black institutions, and I grew up in a mostly white town. So I know deeply what indoctrination feels like. Not even against black people, but against what I was taught about myself. If we don't root out this darkness, if we don't break these spells that have been cast upon us just to extract from us, then that is such a deep shame on all of us. And the rot will just continue to eat anything that our community will ever try and build upon this.
We are sitting here continuously watching history repeat itself. How is it possible that Rick Chow didn't get convicted for taking that young boy's life? How is it possible that Rick Chow didn't get convicted for taking a 14-year-old's life? Mind you, you have camera footage showing that that boy wasn't stealing. Mind you, you have police evidence that showed that he lied. Mind you, you have police evidence that showed that his son lied. If you're not familiar with the story, Cyrus went into Rick Chow's store. Rick Chow and his son thought that Cyrus was stealing water. They chased Cyrus out of their store, gun him down, take his life, and Rick Chow doesn't get convicted for it. Now I want to ask you a question. If roles were reversed and black male shot Asian young boy, what do you guys think would have happened? Tell me, what do you think would have happened? I'll do you one better. Same situation happens almost 34 years ago. Young girl goes into store. They think she's stealing orange juice. She gets her life taken. Might I add, Asian store owner. What do you think would happen if the roles were reversed? Do you think they would get convicted? Because these people haven't got convicted. And this ain't a pointing finger day. But y'all got to understand that these people keep doing this shit. They don't respect us. They don't look at us like we're equal. They don't look at us with sympathy. This is a situation where a 14-year-old boy lost his life. He ain't get a chance to do anything with his life. He lost his life. His life was taken away from him by somebody who thought he was stealing and he wasn't stealing. And this guy did not get convicted. But these are the same people that we support. When they come in our neighborhoods, put up their stores, we go, we buy from them, we know what's going on. Actually, if you want to get technical, that guy is still going to be a store owner. He will still be in business and people will still support him. And that's the problem. We at a point where this shit is getting out of line. We at a point where we continuously seeing the same shit over and over and over.
Since I'm Asian, I guess I'll comment and give my 2 cents. Because it was an Asian family that shot a young black man, a kid. In the sense of trying to run a business, you have to be very protective of the establishment. But there comes a point where when someone enters the establishment, the customer has to identify what they're trying to get or what they're trying to purchase at that moment. And in the process of doing so, sometimes certain things can look suspicious. Depending on the skin color, if you move a certain way, it looks suspicious. If that kid was an Asian kid, the Asian family would have overlooked it, most definitely. The problem is because he was a black kid, he was already targeted in the establishment. He was almost to the point where they didn't want him inside the establishment. When you have money, when you have a great lawyer, when I was in law school, I dropped out, but I remember vividly the professor said, a crime is a crime depending on the type of lawyer you are. With that being said, because Rick Chow could afford a great lawyer, and if you saw that video, he's an amazing lawyer. Because they had a great lawyer, he was found not guilty. From a legality standpoint, from a moral standpoint, he was 100% in the wrong. But it wasn't Rick Chow himself. In the video, he wasn't micromanaging the experience of the customer. It was the fucking wife that was eyeballing the shit out of that kid to try and make sure. Now, they made quick assumption because he's a black kid that he stole some goddamn water bottles, but the video shows, the camera shows that he didn't. If he was a white kid, they would have stopped him. If he ran, they would have just checked back to the cameras, filed a police report, call it a day. But because he was a black kid, the surveillance of that kid was overly aggressive and extreme. He clearly put the water bottles back, and at some point, we as a society have to admit that certain things happen for certain people, obviously because of the skin color.
Cyrus Carmack Belton, may he rest in power. He was horrifically murdered by being shot in the back after being chased over 100 yards. The man who murdered him is named Rick Chow, and he's a Chinese gas station owner, and he allegedly did it because of a stolen water bottle, and he was just found not guilty. A child being shot in the back is extremely upsetting for any reason, but it's even more upsetting because we live in a country that normalizes brutalizing black and brown bodies, that doesn't let black children have their innocence, and doesn't give justice to these black children. In this case, just further proves that. This case is also bringing up conversations about anti-black racism in the Asian American community, in the Chinese community, because despite all the work and fighting that black Americans have done to grant us the civil rights that we enjoy today, we have not shown up in solidarity in return to continue this work of undoing systemic racism, especially anti-black racism. And Chinese people have honestly shown that they are capable of performing violence on the black community, both directly and indirectly. The roots of anti-blackness in China, as I understand it, is quite complex and cannot really be reduced down to a TikTok, but I'm going to try anyway. And Chinese people, black people, feel free to correct me on anything. The three roots are colorism, media, and white supremacy being internalized as progress. Root 1, colorism. This is easy to understand. In China, it is seen as more desirable to have fair skin, and that leads to problems. Root 2, media. There are not a lot of black people that live in China, so a lot of Chinese people get exposed to black people through media that depicts black people negatively, and a lot of that comes from Western media that portrays black people stereotypically, but some of it comes from domestic Chinese media as well. Like, I remember going to see a movie called Wolf Warrior 2 in cinemas in China, and it took place in Africa, and it was not a positive depiction of Africa or African peoples, and that was a very popular movie in China. Root 3 is white supremacy being internalized as progress. Much of modern Chinese history is defined by Chinese people being humiliated by Western powers and Japan. And this reaction to this century of humiliation is progress by any means necessary, and that means copying the West in terms of industrialization, in terms of the economy, and also in terms of white supremacy culture, which includes anti-black racism. This white supremacy culture positions white Europeans as advanced and sophisticated and positions black people as at the bottom of this perceived racial hierarchy. Notice how none of these routes include any incidences historically of black people harming Chinese people in any way. The Chinese diaspora brought these attitudes over to the United States and other Western countries, where these attitudes were further exacerbated by the notion that you have to internalize white supremacy ideals in order to survive in this country. We as Chinese Americans must admit that anti-blackness is a problem in our community. We must commit to undoing this racism, which is a byproduct of centuries of exploitation and colonization. We must commit to learning more about Black and Indigenous histories here in the so-called United States, and we must recognize that this work is ongoing, that it's probably never going to stop, and that the more you learn about anti-Blackness here in this country, the more you recognize that anti-Blackness has its tentacles in a lot of aspects of American life. We need to commit to this so that we can recognize when we're being used as a pawn of white supremacy, when we're being used as a wedge to divide peoples of color, whether that's through the model minority myth or some other means. We need to commit to anti-Black racism because this violence needs to stop. We need to stop harming our Black neighbors, and we must build something better together.